Okay, call the meeting to order, the Finance Committee. Today is Wednesday, April 3rd. And have a roll call. We have Jerry, Glenn, Tom, Pat, David, Lance and I, David, and myself, Bernie, the chairman. Do we have any citizens who wish to speak? Nope, guess not. So we go right into the Finance Committee matters. The article, or the subject was the school committee asking the presentation of a detailed finance report of the feasibility study in Degas Elementary. And just to lay the groundwork, what prompted this initially was that in one of the presentations that the school committee conducted, there was a comment in for the article on the feasibility study, and the amount was $1.6 million. We only appropriated $1 million, so we're wondering where you got the extra money. We can do something. But, and also, in the process, I've attended most of the meetings and all, and there's been no financial presentations through that. We spent $1 million, certainly recovering funds on the building committee itself, and there's been no financial reports to the committee, and that concerns us, that the committee has choices to make and should be allowed to make those choices. So if anyone wants to start with our presentation, please, appreciate it.
Don't rush the podium too much.
I chose the last row. Do you want to go and, oh,
Where can I plug
is it
in?
gone? Oh, you can plug your own
A
computer?
couple of them. Try this one.
Okay. Now this is being recorded, because there'll be no close-ups, because we are unmanned or anything like that today. While we're waiting, have you been in this? David, of course, won his seat for the Board of Assessors position. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Have you asked around if you'll be able to continue to serve on the committee?
My understanding is I will not be, but I'm still pursuing.
That's correct.
Well, tell us, and now perhaps you have some openings here. 5.
Well, if we can get some new people on board, get some new blood.
I was comfortable with the old people.
Speak for yourself. Well, my kids would put me in that category.
Oh, I thought you were coming through, no. Could be coming through the door.
No, it's coming through here. Man. Not terribly effective.
See if they're facing down, if that blocks us.
I think it's on the
It's
edge
coming
of the
through the
window.
edge, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You want to turn the light off?
Yes, of course.
Should take care of those.
There
All right.
Dominic's gonna be pissed.
Good
Even
evening.
if you're doing the presentation, I want to express initially my disappointment that the chairman of the committee is not here. He's the responsible party for all this processes that goes through with the committee, and that's what we're going to also ask questions about. By all means, please continue. You
Okay.
know more than everybody does.
I will do my best to answer whatever questions you have. Hopefully we have the information you're looking for. So good evening. Thanks again for having us. Met with this group a few times now. So give you a quick update of where we are now, what's happened since the last time that we met. So right now we're in the design development phase. We're nearing the end of design development. The design development estimate package is out on the street right now to the bidders. We have a bid opening, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Bid opening scheduled for next week. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail. So here's a snapshot of what the project looks like at this current point in time. So colors have not been selected, but the building shape, the size, the floor plans, the footprint, the site plan, the parking counts, all that stuff at this point is really pretty well locked. The architects are working to develop the details and fine tune everything that goes into the cost estimates. So we do have another round, actually 3 more rounds of cost estimating. Same thing as last time, we'll have 2 independent estimators, one working under the architect, one working under myself, which is the owner's project manager. They do them in a totally separate vacuum, and then we have a big reconciliation meeting. We go line by line and we pull the estimates into line, and then we analyze where that is against the approved and authorized budget. So you can see the building hasn't changed a whole lot. There are a ton of subtle changes in there. Someone who's really been involved at the building committee level has seen that, I mean, even something as small as changing the look of our stair tower or the front entrance canopy really warrants a lot of discussion. So there's a lot of time and effort that goes into even the simplest little details on this much larger project. So this view here that you're looking at is from Minot Ave being on the bottom of the screen. And this is view from the north looking to the south. The wing on the right side here is the 2-story wing, and then on the left side is the 3-story wing. So the early education center is down here on this lower level for pre-K and kindergarten. The common spaces are captured in really the center. So you have a main entry lobby here, gymnasium sort of in the back right, and then the cafeteria in the back left. Directly above those spaces we have something we're calling an innovation hub. So it's sort of a mix of art spaces, STEAM spaces, what might be a traditional library or a traditional media center. Stuff has really evolved over the years as far as school goes, working closely with DESE and the folks from Mass School Building Authority and Wareham's own educational department to make sure that everything is state-of-the-art, latest and greatest, and the building is going to last a long time in the future and still be educationally relevant.
Is there a theater in there?
It's a cafetorium, so the MSBA does not reimburse for traditional auditoriums at the elementary level, but we do have 7,500 square foot cafeteria with a platform and stage within the cafeteria. So this is the view looking, so Minot Ave, and this one would be on the top of your screen, Brandy Hill would be on the right side. So really a drone flying over what the current soccer fields are, which are part of this project that do get revamped. And you're looking at the back area here, so these curtain wall windows are the cafeteria from the rear. Off to the right side here, this is the music, band, chorus wing. And then this is your 3-story wing, and then here's your 2-story wing. Gymnasium is here, so there's plenty of natural light coming in through the raised windows, typical of what you might find at any modern gym. So as I said, we do have a package out on the street right now. We had a pre-bid walkthrough last week. We've actually had a lot of interested bidders, which is great news. We scheduled another pre-bid for this Friday. An addenda was issued today, and then the bids are due next Wednesday. So that's going to be a live bid opening here in Town Hall at 3 o'clock. This first bid package is for the abatement and demolition of the existing building. We have 3...
Excuse me, what does abatement mean?
Asbestos removal. So we have a total of 3 bid packages. There are 2 early packages this year. After we finish the abatement and demolition, we will put another package out on the street for the site grading and site prep. So tree removal, grubbing, and then rough grading. There are a lot of cuts and fills and balancing of the site. So that package is going to happen right afterwards. So we'd be looking at bid opening on that one June 26th, and then mobilization towards the end of July for that particular contractor. Construction completion date for that second package is this fall, so we are out of there before the winter time. The other major benefit to having these early release packages, most of your risk in a construction project is actually getting the building out of the ground. You never know what you're going to find in the ground. So by performing this work in advance of the full bid package, it allows for some schedule, we call it float. Essentially, the amount of time an activity can slip before it impacts the end date of the project. So with these 2 early packages out of the way, the architects will continue working on the 100% design documents for the project. That 100% package comes out in December. That goes out to bid. It falls under the guidelines of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 149. So very, very prescribed method of bidding the project. It's qualification. So there's a pre-qual process, it's 2-step. And then we invite all the pre-qualified bidders to place a bid on the project, and then we take the low bid. So that process for the third bid package not shown up here, but that'll conclude sometime around February of next year, which works out well for starting foundations once the ground thaws in March. So they'll need to pull permits and put fencing up, and by the time all that happens, contracts need to be signed. They can hit the ground running with foundations. Any questions on the early packages? All right. So in the background, while that early construction work is happening, the architects are moving on the design milestones also prescribed by the state. Is their school building authority mandatory submissions. So the design development submission is right around the corner. That package right now is out to the estimating firms, and same thing happens at the next 3 intervals as well. So the 60%, 90%, and 100% all go out for full design reviews. We have a value management effort. We have both independent estimators at each of those milestones, making sure that the project and the scope maintains within the authorized budget.
Do we need approval from MSBA for the 60 and 90%?
So we will get review comments back on design development, 60% and 90%. The 100% submission is really more for their record. At that point, we're expected to have addressed and incorporated all of their comments that were provided previously.
And what do we expect for turnaround time on those?
The MSBA comments,
Yes.
usually 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yep. They try for 3 weeks. Sometimes it can be a little bit longer. They do engage third-party consultants to do the design reviews for them in some instances. So depending on the workload and the other projects in the pipeline, it may stretch a little bit longer, but they do try for 3 weeks. And then once they review it, we have 2 weeks to respond to their review comments. So we're not just addressing their comments in the next package. We actually have to write a dedicated, formal, point-by-point response to each one of the comments that we received from the MSBA and their consultants. So project cash flow. Here's the total amount paid to date. So this, when I say paid, these are invoices that have made it across my desk as owner's project manager and been cleared for payment. We go through the contract. We make sure that the work has been performed in accordance with the contract. Each one of the contracts on the project has a billing schedule associated with it. Similar to if you were to put an addition on your house, you're gonna have milestones, right? So your foundation's complete, you owe X dollars. And the contracts in this are structured really the same, so we're tying to those same milestones we just looked at. There's design development, 60%, 90%. There's a bidding, and then the construction administration component. And they're all scaled and mapped out with the project schedule. So we're looking at the scheduled duration for that activity, the scheduled value, and then the billing is on a percentage complete base of that task. So that's the way that the invoicing is structured. A little more detail on the project cash flow. So here is the breakdown of just the feasibility and schematic design costs. So the original authorization, as Bernie had said earlier, was $1 million. MVG is the architect, that's Mount Vernon Group. Their base contract was $560,000. So both Mount Vernon Group and PMA, that's who I work for, owner's project manager, the contracts are what's called qualification-based selection. So that's under a different statute of Mass General Laws, Chapter 7. So you put out a solicitation, you receive qualifications packages, and then there's an interview process, and then the selected applicant is then negotiated with, and if you can reach a contract agreement, you enter into a contract. If you can't, you go on to the next low bidder, or next ranked choice. So that's the way those two work. So Mount Vernon Group's contract is structured $560,000, and that is a lump sum cost. PMA's contract was $253,975, structured as a cost plus form of agreement. The reason that we do that on ours is the feasibility studies can range anywhere from, so when we interviewed for this particular project, we put forth an aggressive project schedule trying to beat the market and beat the market escalation. And it can be done, it happened here. We're still on the same exact schedule that we presented 2 years ago. But there's a good deal of risk that if the building committee is not willing to make decisions when the decisions need to be made and that project pushes, it can directly affect that fee. And that's why we structure our contract for that feasibility phase in this manner.
Check,
Yep.
this contract with MVG,
Yep.
that's fixed and that includes all of the architecture through the end of the project,
Through the end of schematic design.
schematic design.
Yep. So theirs is very, at this feasibility level, it's task-based. So they owe us 3 major submissions as part of that. There's a preliminary design program, which is the collection of all the options. Preferred schematic report, which is narrowing down the options into your selected option. And then the schematic design package, which we use to negotiate the agreement with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So the architect has very prescribed milestones that we can tie out their lump sum contract to those milestones. We can look at what the industry standards are, what other architects are charging. It's all public information, and that's what was used to derive their contract.
Both those contracts expire yours as well as into the December 31st, correct?
To be honest, I'm not sure the exact expiration date, but we have not issued any invoices beyond December 31st.
Right.
So, but it would make sense that that would be, but without confirming.
I might outline also that your contracts have been renewed, which is the committee's option was to do that. We could have gone out to bid or renewed your contracts, which the committee opted to do.
Right, yep. So the, actually an invoice list down here for the extra services. So the feasibility and schematic design invoices, where the very last one was in December of last year. There haven't been any costs billed to this since December, other than one invoice that we were holding on to for, the archaeologist did an intensive site survey last summer, and we were waiting for the final report to be approved by the state. But the work had been performed. The invoice was received back in, it was actually the bottom one there, October 1st. It was just held on to until, I believe it was early February, that it was finally paid once we had clearance from the state that the report was acceptable. So we also have this line called other project costs, and the other project costs, we've actually itemized every invoice that hits those lines down here below. There's not very many of them. So PM&C is the estimator that works under PMA, so we engage that independent estimator for a second set of eyes on the cost estimates to make sure that the budget that we're presenting in the state actually jives with what they're seeing in the current market conditions. And we're also doing it as a check on the architect's estimate to make sure that they're giving us what are independently viewed as accurate numbers. UEC here is a subcontractor to Mount Vernon Group, so they are the hazmat consultant, so they go into both Minot and they actually reviewed the DECA Sahara report. And this is just the initial assessment looking at how much we should carry as a budget. They recommended $980,000, and at this point right now, I think it's $985,000 or something. So they were actually very, very close just using the AHERA reports. PARP, that is the archaeologist that did the intensive site survey. So they came on as a sub to the architect. You can see they had 3 invoices that phase. They had the permit and site survey work. If you happened to swing by the Minot site last summer, you would have seen a million holes all over the site. So the Mass Historic Commission requires that we grid out the site and we do test pits, so 50 centimeter, 50 centimeter, 50 centimeter deep. And they actually have to sift for any artifacts, and that determines whether or not there's an area of historical significance. And if something is flagged, they could ask us to investigate further and take the next step, which they did not do during that effort, which is good news. So bottom one down here, Semiotes, they perform the site survey. So they go out, they check topography, grades, they document existing utility structures, overhead wires, all that stuff that is being used to inform the design. And then that last invoice is that final report that we're waiting for Mass Historic to approve for release payment. That is a summary of the feasibility and schematic costs. Are there any questions on any of those?
I have an odd question. When you put up a brand new building like this, and you have to knock down the old building, we actually have 2 in elementary. The thing that gets me, is there anything on the old buildings that can go onto the new building?
Unfortunately,
Like saying
yeah.
if there was a brick, or is there any way of doing that? Or did anybody ask that question?
yep, the question absolutely came up. Unfortunately, it ends up being a lot more expensive working with old materials. The old materials need to be removed in a selective, careful demolition manner. If it's something like brick, then you have to have somebody on, whether it's a wet saw or chiseling away the mortar that came off with the brick. We do look at items like the generator, the boiler, items that,
Oh, I know used ones for that.
Yep.
No, what I was talking about was, you know, somebody wrote something here.
Oh,
Sentimental
We want
items.
that
Oh, yes, yep.
somewhere.
Yep. So there is a salvage
You know?
plan, the plaques and items of importance so working with the architects and with the district, those items are identified and they're actually rolled into the bid package for
So they
salvage.
did consider that, okay.
It is,
I'm
yep.
not
I could-
completely nuts.
No,
if I could
no.
just add a little bit, what we did is we've made numerous walkthroughs through the building, and we've pulled any historical memorabilia out. We have that stored in a secure place. If you recall, there was tile when you would walk into the school. That's all come down. We've kept that into place, and then we'll find a new home for it. So the only thing that we haven't been able to figure out how to get and preserve is a tree in the front yard. We just don't think we're going to be able to salvage the
What's the
tree.
significance of the tree?
It was donated by a parent in memory of a student. So we'd really like to be able to do that. We're just not sure that we have the ability to keep it alive for 3 years.
Oh, my, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, could you move it down to the beach? We're always looking for things down at the beach to remind us of certain people. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Conservation probably wouldn't want it.
We also heard that there is a, what do you call that? You put a time capsule by the flagpole, so we're going to be sending some people over, hopefully with a backhoe, to dig down to see if we can find the time capsule, because we'd love to be able to open that and see what was put in it.
That was my question.
Good, yeah, very good.
Any other questions on feasibility or schematic design?
I guess I have a question on, in account, on Money Trail. Okay. When you approve an invoice for other than your company, is that?
Correct.
Okay. When you approve those invoices, what's your process and whom do you hand it off to? Does anyone sit with you for an explanation? Can you just give that a...
Yep. Well, it's actually my last slide, so
Okay.
it works.
If
I
you
will
want to wait
jump.
till your last...
Nope, that was it. So it's a good time. I can always jump back if you'd like me to. So this is the master budget that we have for Wareham. So to tell you a little about the process that we have, anytime a contract is entered, it gets broken out. So if there's sub-consultants, we put the sub-consultants in. We actually tag it to, let me zoom in a little bit so it's hard to read. Okay. So this is every contract that's been executed on the project. Every invoice needs to draw down against one of these contract line items. So when we get a contract, we identify it as either a base contract with a zero or an amendment, which is what we just did with both Mount Vernon Group and PMA's contracts. And then we tag it to a cost code that is structured actually by the MSBA. So they give us, in our budget agreement with the MSBA, they give us different categories, there's 60, 70 of them. And then we allocate buckets of money to each, and we can't go over any of those buckets without getting explicit written authorization from the school building authority. If we try to go over it, they'll kick right back at us. So this is our check in our system. The cost code gets plugged here, and the sheets really all tied to each other and self-populate. So we have a committed amount, so we might have a contract that has like an allowance. I mean, maybe there's a site survey allowance, but it's not committed yet because they didn't give us a proposal from a site surveyor, so they don't have authorization to bill it. So if that particular committed line did not have anything entered, and they tried to bill for the site surveyor, it will pop. And so you can see this one right here that popped is actually PMA's contract underrun. And the reason that popped is because we reset the budget to a lower number than our contract value. So what this is saying is that right now, our contract and feasibility is overcommitted as compared to the approved project budget. So we cannot bill against this line item ever again. It's totally tapped, we've reset it. So once we've established the contracts, we go into the invoice side of things, and every single invoice gets a corresponding cost code that lines up with that contracts tab. So we assign the company, the subcontractor, if there is one, the invoice number, the amendment number, if it is an amendment, month of billing, the invoice date. If we have it from the town, we plug a PO number. The ProPay system is the submission that it goes to the state, so every single cost gets submitted to and audited by the state's auditors. So we track when it was submitted, so if we ever have to go back and challenge reimbursement on an item, we can say that it was ProPay request number 4 that you short paid us on. The amount, of course, so you can see the total amount billed against the project. And then this ties back to those MSBA cost codes. And again, this whole thing is conditionally formatted. So when a line is fully billed out, it turns to a 0 and it turns yellow. When there's money left in the account, it stays green. So that's again showing that contract underrun from feasibility on PMA's contract. When we get down into design development, same setup. So these lines are totally billed out. These are the cost codes they're billed against. And then these lines have money left to be billed against those particular line items in the budget and in the contract. All of this data then rolls and populates into, I'm not even gonna try to zoom into that one, but these are those MSBA cost codes on the left side. And then it populates over time, and that's what populates our cash flow projection. And then from there, we can roll it up into a summary level. And again, this is, I mean, we're all about full transparency, so I have no problem emailing this document if anyone wants to poke around it. There's really no issue there. There's nothing that the building committee hasn't seen or didn't know of in advance before it's built. So on our end, when we get an invoice, it's really just a plug in the numbers, make sure the work was actually performed in accordance with the contract, make sure there's available funds to bill, make sure the MSBA is not going to kick the project costs out unexpectedly. And from there, we'll initial the invoice and send it off to Susan Owen with the business office at the school. That's my invoice process. So.
Now, does anyone, you're available at any time to go over any of these?
Yep. Right. And we do get questions frequently, and the questions can range from what is this for to do we have an executed amendment number 3 to build this line against, is this reimbursable from the MSBA? I mean, there are definitely questions on most invoices that come in.
Yeah.
Something will come back.
Now, every time you issue or get an invoice ready, you're updating your spreadsheet and so forth.
Yep.
Is there an ability to go into your database for that, or would you provide reports? How would that work?
So typically we'll generate reports because that way you don't have to reinvent the wheel and learn how the document works. We can spit out the data based on what's being requested. If someone asks for a summary of everything billed against design development, I can put one filter on and spit it out in 2 seconds with a PDF.
So what are you doing now? We spent about $2 million. What are you doing now? Are you doing anything on a weekly or a monthly basis or quarterly or?
Yep, so we have to submit reports monthly to the school building authority, and that has invoices this period, total cost to date, contract amendments, contract totals, all that stuff. When we get into construction, we still have to do the MSBA one, but we also do more of a construction monthly report format. It's something that the MSBA doesn't require. We do it because it's good for visibility in the public, so everyone can see, okay, here's pictures of the building that they can't necessarily go inside of yet, but at least they can see, all right, the lockers were installed last month, and that's what the inside of the classrooms look like. And so items like cash flow, any potential issues or concerns on the project are identified, schedule milestones are addressed. Generally ends up being a 5 to 6 page report, but it's chock full of information.
So that seems very transparent. Now, that's speaking to the invoices that you approve. What about the invoices from P&A? How does that work? What's the flow on that?
So those are approved directly by the business, so I don't initial or review my own invoices. So I send them directly to Kim, Susan, their staff, and then from there it goes to the school committee. But our contract is structured in a way, like I was talking earlier, where we have certain milestones. So we have a fee total, and the MSBA, again, they set your contract value. So for our services, they set the value at 3.5% of the construction cost. And that is fully reimbursable from the state. If you go over that 3.5%, the state says your fee is above what we're willing to participate in, so it's 100% of the district. But ours is 100% reimbursable. Architect, very similar. They set that at 10% of the construction cost. So both those contracts are locked in at those numbers. So for everything that is invoiced as a basic services to from either P&A or Mount Vernon Group, the state is reimbursing at 74.98%.
Now that's up, you just addressed the feasibility study, correct?
No, that's all the way through completion. So there are no ineligible basic services costs under the OPM or architect for this project.
Okay, two issues then. Is that all on the website? Because this is all covered on the Freedom of Information. So is that all this charts and like on your website?
So the charts are in the building committee presentations, which are on the website. Yeah.
So anyone can go in
Yep.
and see them?
Yep, they absolutely could.
Now, your approval process for the feasibility study I'm familiar with because it went through the school committee. Now, how about for the building committee itself? Because that's different. There's a different appropriation for that.
So do you mean beyond the feasibility study?
Yes, the accountability process.
Yep. So
Because the money was given to the committee, what the feasibility was given to the school committee. The 90 mil went to the directly to the building committee.
I can't speak to the approval process. We still send them to the district, and I don't know who looks at them beyond that.
What we do is, it goes to Susan, it goes to Joyce, and to the members of the school committee, and then I review them, and
What does the committee do? Because the committee has, according to the wording of the article, the committee has control of the funds.
right, and
What does the committee do?
when we meet, we review what the budget has been, and we go over where we're at.
So we do actually present, in every single building committee presentation, there's an updated invoice list, such as the one you see here. So that is in every single building committee presentation.
So the building committee then, because I've been to meetings and no one's made any votes of approval for it. That's where the first approval goes through, is through the approval of the committee itself. That's why I'm surprised the chairman isn't here. Because as I said again, the money was specifically given to the committee.
So the challenges associated, and I'm going to speak in general terms across all of our school projects. We've done it in districts where every building committee, we show up with a stack of invoices once we get to do furniture and technology. We'll get upwards of 100 invoices per month, and we would spread them all around the table, and then the building committee would have to go around and we'd have to get a majority signature on each invoice. Where that becomes a major problem is under Massachusetts general law. When we get an invoice from the general contractor under Chapter 149 and Chapter 30B, we have 15 days to pay that invoice. And the building committee only meets once a month. And out of those once a month meetings, we only have a quorum, I mean, most of the time, but not all the time. So if you're in a situation where, I'll jump back to the cash flow here so we can see what our peak burn is. That is construction costs. So this blue line here tops out at $6 million a month. So say we get an invoice for $6 million from a general contractor and we can't pay them in the 15 days. They're charging prime interest rate on that amount of money for any day beyond that 15 days. And that can add up very quickly to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's why my recommendation is always to, I've been down that road and I would never recommend that again. it places a tremendous amount of liability on the district because of that provision in the law. That's,
So
So,
a small group has been formed within the committee.
yes.
Which will approve on a, whatever is required in terms, so we can pay them within the 15 days. I understand that, and then they report back to the full committee at our regular meetings with quorum.
right. Yep, and that report format is the invoice list. It's literally dumped right out of that budget file for everything that's been submitted in the past month or
Do you recall
processed.
who's on that committee? Building committee, is that you're referring to? You referred
The
to
building
The
committee is
small
what's
group?
put on. The technical review committee is what it was termed, and there's a representative from.
Town,
Yep, so
the school.
yep, facilities, school department, and building committee.
Who's the final signature on that?
So we need a 2/3 majority vote from that technical review committee in order to move on any, so that TRC, we call it, is really geared up more for change authorizations in the work. So similar to invoicing, it's very, very fast-paced when you're moving $6 million a month. Changes are going to happen on a regular basis. They do occur in construction, unfortunately. When those changes come about, we need an ability to move on those changes before we delay the project, potentially. And that's why that technical review committee is initially formed. I don't know.
We've been told by the town accountant that the final signature needs to be the chair of the school committee to pay the bills.
As it is with all bills that come to
That's
us.
going through your warrant then?
Yes,
A separate warrant.
right, I can answer the process. Once Chad sends all the invoices to us, we put it, they're now running on a separate warrant, just for the MSBA billings. It's then sent to Dr. Schaefer Hood, the chair of the school committee, the chair of the building committee. They review it, and then ultimately, I think it's the chair of the school committee that signs off on it.
But to a question that was asked earlier this week, I had a question about an invoice that I was asked to sign for on a warrant, and Chad was available immediately to answer those questions.
It is my
What
discovery-
type of things do you get for the 1/3 that say they don't want to pay it? For what reason? What are the general reasons?
I mean, generally, we will not put forth a recommendation that doesn't make sense and we do not agree with. So the major reason for opposition would be if it's a discretionary change. So maybe it's a change order, it wasn't in the original project scope, and nearing the end of the project and there's contingency money left and somebody wants to upgrade whatever in the building. So in those instances, we might have some discussion back and forth.
I guess my discomfort is that most of your signatures come from people, from non-construction people. That's my concern.
But those bills, I had those same questions earlier this week. Those bills are coming through our project manager. They're being approved at that level, which, in my opinion, is why we have a project manager.
Well, there's a check and balance that's supposed to be implemented, that's my concern.
Well, you'd have to hire another consultant.
Exactly. I mean,
Not
that's why we
necessarily.
have a
people
project
on-
manager.
In our town that are skilled, are knowledgeable, we've got people on the committee that are knowledgeable in construction, extraordinarily so.
Well, there's also an MSBA audit team that reviews every invoice on a monthly basis too, so that's another built-in check and balance in the system. So they have a full staff of professional auditors, and I mean, if we submit an invoice that has a 55-cent mileage charge on it, they'll find it and they'll strike it out and fire it back at us.
The committee does see it after it's gone through the warrant process. It's kept in a binder, that anyone on the committee, they discuss it at their monthly meetings, or Chad actually brings it up on the screen, not invoice by invoice, but the invoice by invoice is sitting in a binder, so anybody can flip through it.
I mean, no disrespect to anyone involved, but I've been through a process that was, became a horror show, and just uncomfortable without everybody having the skill or the background on the signatures. Please go on, Jeff.
Do you have anything else?
I think that's it from me. Happy to answer any questions. So.
Question,
Yes,
when the warrant is done, it goes to the town accountant, that warrant goes to the Board of Selectmen for signature, correct? We do analyze the bills, so.
You also, I didn't think you went on your warrant.
No.
It goes through the town accountant.
It goes to the town accountant, but I don't believe it goes to the selectmen, does it?
And it's all,
Do other
I'm not
school
sure, did that
departments?
show up on your warrant, Alan?
We sign everybody's, we have to sign the warrants for pay,
Hmm.
for payroll, for expenses, everything.
So irrespective of going through the school department, it still goes through your warrant?
All the school department bills go through us, the final
Okay.
signature, sign off. My only question is, I'm probably the only selectman that goes through all of them. I would suggest that there's some explanation is given, because I have in the past rejected signing until I had explanations.
I think that's the whole objective this evening, is having explanations coming through, not just having one line with a certain number of dollars. We have the luxury of being concerned with only one facet primarily, which is money.
Yep.
So I certainly understand the need to do due diligence, and if it would bring the committee any more comfort, I'd be happy to come once a month, once every 2 months, and share where we're at as far as with the financials, that we're on track, if that would give you any more ease.
Well, I would just suggest that we do this mutually interested in about every 4 months.
Okay.
A lot goes on in between, and there's no need to, every month having to report to us. We're not that interested in what's going on. Well, we're very interested.
We are.
My apologies for that, strike that from the record. But it would impede your progress to have to come up with us every month to give us a detailed explanation. We're not trying to run the committee. We just want to be updated as to what's going on.
Sure.
And to date, we are literally following the billing schedule that's in the contracts to a T. So the invoice has one line, but it's one line that equals the line that's in the contract. Another way that we could potentially do it is actually list the scheduled values for each phase and then show it as a % complete if that would help. We're certainly happy to do that.
I'm familiar with that as a way of doing it. If you list the % complete on each of the tasks,
Yep.
against the amount of money that's been charged, you have a pretty straightforward idea of how you're doing against your contract.
Yep. So we can change the format and switch to that format. Absolutely, that's an easy ask.
I think it should be considered.
Okay.
At least for reports to us, I'd like to see that.
So let me generate a draft of that version, and I'll send that to the usual channels that we would go through and see if that's something that works with their systems and books.
Yeah, not to any individual on the committee, send it to everybody. Everybody gets everything that comes to
Okay.
us.
And the other thing is, Chad and I have a conversation every Friday morning. My question is, what do I need to know? What's going on? So if you have a question that comes up, if you could get it to me, I'd be happy to ask on a Friday.
All right.
Now, all the paperwork, or all the slides that you generate, it's all public information, and also required to a copy of it required to remain here in Wareham. Where would a citizen access all of that?
So everything is it's all electronically hosted right now. So everything we do is.
It's gotta be paper somewhere, because there's gonna be boxes.
It's
So I
all,
wanna be sure that there's anybody, if they want, should access, for one, and for two, as I suggested at the last meeting we had, I would encourage them, trying to get more civilians or outside of the workings of the town to join the committee. As many as possible, alleviates any concerns or accusations, false accusations primarily.
yeah, we could do that. The other thing is, we're really coming upon some pretty exciting points, where we're looking at colors, where we're looking at different pieces in the building, and we know that that could be of interest. It certainly is an interest to our staff, and we're hoping it is parents as well as community members. So we're planning some meetings to share where are we at, what are we looking at, et cetera, because not everybody has had the advantage of sitting in the building meetings to understand where we're at. So certainly in those meetings, we could share, but we could also give a brief financial for any interested constituents.
Yes, Al?
On the project of about $90 million, there's a set percentage that's not going to be reimbursable. I would like also to see as we're paying bills, and what is a reimbursable expense and what is not, so we can track that as well.
Identified, yes.
Because that's going to be questions that are going to come up all the time. Thank you.
You know, there's a lot of detail that goes on in the process that has probably put many of us to sleep because we're really not that interested in it. However, we are interested in the overall process, how much it's costing us, and then if I have a question, why is 1.5 million there with a two-word explanation, then that's interesting. But of course, this is the finance committee, so we will appreciate more detail.
Yep. So we can definitely try to change the format to something that I think I understand what you're asking for.
Yeah, and Dave is very familiar with that, his aspect of it, and then Jerry with the financial aspect of how you're working out.
Yep.
We just want it on time and under budget, that's it.
I'm with you on that. Couldn't agree more.
Bernard, could I just say something to your
Yes.
point about the makeup of the committee? It would be wonderful to have, like you said, different members of the community. But as a member of the committee, you know how difficult it is for people to attend. I mean, the committee is already made up of a very nice cross-section of our community. But
I have a
schedules
suggestion.
don't always allow.
We finally moved it to 6 o'clock, which allows 2 of our members to get there breathlessly. And I would suggest we start at 6:30, and even 2 of our people have difficulties making it. And even the ones you're having during the day at 3:30. There's several of those meetings, and if someone is working, there's no way they're gonna be able to say, I can take every Wednesday off, and half the day, their employer is gonna get discouraged. I would encourage you to reschedule those meetings to 6 o'clock, so everybody has an opportunity. And as you point out, that would be, at least, would drop a impediment to other people joining us.
Well, I don't disagree with you, but I believe that they do make an effort to make those meetings, you know, as convenient as possible. But for instance, yesterday, the meetings were with, you know, the fire chief, the police chief, and, you know, they're working around other people's schedules also.
Last meetings before that were for custodial staff and food service staff, so sometimes we're looking at meeting times for select groups that could be involved. The other, I mean, I live 5 minutes away, so it's not an issue for me, but a lot of the consultants on the project might be coming from New Hampshire or wherever it is. So when we start pushing, well, what happens is they then call in, and when they call in, you have half as much productivity in the meeting,
Well, we'll Skype it.
so.
Any other questions?
So how are we doing right now, our budget versus our production?
We are right on the schedule that was developed more than 2 years ago at this point. So the same schedule that PMA walked into our interview with is the same schedule that we're on.
And our costs are
budget.
appropriate?
We are on point. We're still one of the lowest cost projects in the MSBA pipeline, possibly the lowest. We'll find out when the next data report comes out. So the building that's being put forth is a very durable, economical, efficient, time-tested, true materials. So on that end, we couldn't be doing any better.
Excellent.
How are we doing paying invoices? Because we only just borrowed the $10 million that we've encumbered, certainly, billings.
That would be a question for my accounts receivable department. And they haven't been kicking and screaming at me, but who knows? I'd have to check with them.
We just signed the bond yesterday.
Yeah. So I presume we've got bills out there that we've encumbered. On your side, we haven't got the
Possible.
money yet.
Yep.
We're good for it, I'm sure.
Yep. Well, it takes time to get paid in the public process. We certainly understand that.
Well, sir, this is your life, working with the public process. Everyone, Jerry? Tom? Glenn? Yeah,
That's all right.
that's all right?
Yeah.
Dave?
All the contractors that we're going to be dealing with, they will all be vetted by MSBA. Is that correct?
So they are vetted by the Department of Capital Asset Management, not by MSBA. MSBA gets involved for OPMs and architects, but when it comes to the construction bids, they step off to the side. But there's a certification system. All the certified contractors that are qualified for the value of our project are actually posted right on the website. You can look at them. There's half a dozen in our immediate area that we would expect to pursue the project.
So there's another review that goes on at the state before the award for individual contracts. So they all have to be approved. Contractors have to be approved by the state.
Yes, so there,
To work on this project.
it's a standing list that the state reissues every month. And the qualification package itself was reviewed by a pre-qualification committee. It has to consist of somebody from my team, somebody from the architect team, somebody from the district. And scoring is all, again, statutory. There's X number of points in this category. You can't add or change points from the category. So it's, again, a very prescribed process for pre-qualification. Once they're pre-qualified, we say you're invited to bid, you're not invited to bid, and we issue the bid documents.
I just want someone who has a three-man outfit in Wareham who doesn't get invited to bid, I want them to understand that they have to go through the state first.
Yep.
And get approved.
Yeah, they're all pre-qualified, and they can certainly apply, but it is a difficult process to go through to be awarded the qualification.
I was on that committee at the state for a while.
Oh, were you?
Yes.
Oh, good.
For several years.
Anything else? No, well, thank you very much, appreciate the update and understanding of what goes on behind the scenes, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. No problem, anytime. Thank you.
Are you planning on any presentation, since the moderator is sitting behind you, to ask for time to make a presentation to the town meeting?
We had not planned on it. We certainly are available.
It's their money.
Yep. So,
I would suggest it, to work it out
Yep.
with the moderator.
okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, as far as the, as far as the town meeting, the special town meeting is concerned, we've of course approved everything except the capital outlay, although we went through some things that Derek had mentioned, but haven't had a report, and I'll probably be going to print tomorrow or Friday, so it's too late to get them in at this point. Do we have it, not necessarily for the article itself, but a 5-year plan?
There is a 5-year plan, which we could,
Could you email it to me? I'll try to get it in.
I will get email.
Yeah, I had one, you gave it to me, and I lost it.
All right, I will get an email to you.
I had a sea of papers around me, and my housekeeper came in, and I had to pick them up.
Mhm. All right, before or after?
Well, she's coming back, so obviously it was before.
All right.
Any other questions?
On the, let's see, on the special 12, it was name Onset Pier. I believe that is being withdrawn as a result of the selectmen's meeting. Is that correct?
Derek had a meeting with Mike Bessie. They went down to the pier, and I'm not sure what Mike will do at town meeting. In theory, he should be pulling it. The agreement they had was they're going to put up a stone with a plaque on it and move it. You know that little turnaround as you come in to the pier? It's where the
Yes.
bus comes in, drops people off sometimes. It's like a half circle turn. Somewhere in that dirt area in the back there, there'll be a stone with the thing put in there permanently. And that's what it's going to end up being. I would prefer personally having something on the new Harbor Masters building when the new pier is done. And then we could also list other Harbor Masters as they come along.
Right.
But that's what they decided. It's not worth fighting about it. So it's done, but again, Mike has to get up at town meeting and ask for the article to be withdrawn.
All right.
Is there any other issues on the special or the annual that anyone like to talk about? Bring up? No, we look pretty good. Okay, as I said, probably hopefully to print tomorrow or Friday, and hopefully we'll get it down on a regular schedule. and have it available a week before. And I'll distribute it to the library, town clerk's office. And, the moderator also, I think she probably would like a copy. Anything else, gentlemen? Ladies? You good to go? As far as our meeting again, obviously, the 22nd is town. Do you wish to meet on the 17th at all? I'm not sure it would preclude last minute meeting anyway.
Why don't we leave that as tentative?
Tentative?
Yeah, I prefer just to talk with the articles, I should say, on paper.
With any changes it might be.
Yeah, so we can.
If it's available on the 17th, I will schedule one. If not, we'll have to wait till the 22nd and meet at 6:30. So I think those,
Or earlier, I mean, it would be nice.
we could
as a
meet, if we
group,
want to at 6, of course,
Yes.
depending
as
on
a
the
group,
issues.
Go
and then-
through
the whole thing all over again?
Yeah.
Yeah, because as I outlined, I'd like to ask each of you, and those who have submitted suggestions for explanations, I'll ask them if you would like to do the presentation, and then the rest. Well, David and I will do some primary ones, of course, but generally speaking, I would like to have each of you take turns and get greater involved in that, and give the explanation itself and answer the questions that may come up regarding each.
Yeah, so that's why we need to meet
Right.
a week before, you know?
Yes.
Dress rehearsal.
Dress
Just in case there's any butterflies.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, as far as the flow of information from Chad, you got a good sense of it's out there, okay? But do you have a sense of the procedure, how it works? He signs the invoice, and where he sends it to, who gets their hands on it, and then.
That is a typical process
Yeah.
with any invoice that comes in. The fact that they've interjected the committee is just another step. But the process that he outlined is rather standard within this building and within the school department. But as Alan says, they all come through their warrant, even though the school committee. My only concern, as I mentioned, there's a whole bunch of people that know nothing about construction that are doing the final signatures.
Yeah. And I don't see a way around that unless we hire someone to look at our project, management company.
As far as there's a 3-person committee on the committee itself, which will go through and allow the invoices to be paid within 15 days. Kim is the signature, and the original paper I saw did not designate that she would be a member of that committee. And that in itself, David is on it, and Michael, I can't think of Michael's last name, but Michael works for DOT, and David, of course, is our director of maintenance. So they are very familiar with constructions, reasonably so, because they would sign off on that. But then the ultimate one, like I said, is Kim. And I mean, no disrespect, but I just would be more comfortable having David sign off on them. And I spoke with the town accountant, and she would be more comfortable, but she's not I'm not suggesting that she advocate who does it. It's not her choice to do that. Just implied her opinion, which she would prefer. But my concern was that the committee itself was in the dark about any of these issues. And in deference to the feasibility study, the wording in the article was giving the money directly to the committee, and that was written by the MSBA. I think there might have been something that was deleted from it, but that was very specific, which was very unusual, that they went around or removed the school committee from it. Yeah, obviously, the school committee's here, and the chairman of the committee didn't. I was very disappointed. That's the second time he hasn't shown up for one of these meetings, yet he's the chairman. Anything else?
I was going to suggest, I know you have certain articles assigned to various members of the committee. You assigned 2 to me, which I didn't write on, because I couldn't find what I was looking for. Happened to lose it in my pile of papers, but, I only want to throw out that I wouldn't mind reading those into the microphone.
Okay. I will put out a list of everything, of course, and if you have something specific, now I did put your name on 2 of them, and you've expressed reading those too, so I'll put those aside for you. And the others, if everyone else or anyone else has a specific interest, I certainly will assign that one to you. The rest, you'll have to be victim of the lottery, fine lottery. The
See,
ones
I
that
don't mind reading that.
Yeah,
You know, that we used to have the sheets. And the girl that sits down there, I'm very bad
Joan.
with names, Joan, she used to read them all. I don't mind doing that.
yeah. Dominic used to read them also.
Yes,
But
Dominic did too.
he got hoarse one night and had to stop in the middle, and so we stopped, and then the last 2 times, it was David and I read them.
But I don't mind reading them.
You're on.
Good.
But you have to show up that night now, too.
I've missed one meeting.
I know, that's the Madam
Yeah.
Moderator, do you have anything you would like to add
Not at this time, no, thank you.
at this time? Yes, Alan?
I'd just like to thank David Hurd for his service for the last 6 years, and also for stepping up to become an elected assessor. Thank you.
Peter was shaking his finger at me, now at you. You go and recruit my members, and you take the best.
I just saw him on a Saturday at night at an event, and I said, how would you like to do this? And he smiled and said yes.
You were easy.
Yes, he
You
was.
for a beer or something? You did.
Nothing. Didn't cost anything.
Now, if you want me to read all of them, I need a paper with them all on.
Oh, yes, you'll have the warrant article as it's supposed to be read into the record
Okay.
and the explanation of. What were you gonna say, David?
I was gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, we do that. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you very much.
So,
Right.
See
We
you.
can turn off the television.
now that the meeting's over with, I have a question.
Let's turn off the television.
From some of you longtime residents, we're looking at a house on the Agawam. How often does that flood?
I got it, Alan.
Yeah.
I received my
often?
certification.
Did it flood in 90?
So it's been a while. So it's not like
Hurricane Bob, it did.
it's not like a frequent